Annus Horribilis, a review of exactly what went wrong for Meghan and Harry in 2023, Part 2. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the King YouTube channel. Alright, so this is the second part of a two-part video series. If you haven't checked out the first part yet, please listen to that one first, because we're picking up exactly where we left off. So in the first video, we made it all the way through May, discussing all of Meghan and Harry's failures, of which there are plenty, and now we've made it all the way up to June. So the biggest thing that happened for Meghan and Harry in June was, of course, the cancellation of their Spotify deal, and the fact that they were criticized by the Spotify executive Bill Simmons as grifters. What started off as a single company canceling a contract with Meghan and Harry turned into basically a pile-on. We got headlines like Meghan Markle and Prince Harry are being ripped apart by Hollywood power players. Just because you're famous doesn't make you great at something. In the lead up to this announcement from Spotify, of course, we had been noticing that Meghan and Harry didn't seem particularly great at actually producing the content they had been signed on to create. And so it wasn't really a surprise when we heard that Spotify had decided to axe the two of them. Of course, they spun it, claiming that it was a mutual decision, but we know the truth. They were sacked. In June was also when everybody really started to pay attention to the fact that Meghan and Harry didn't have anything to sell other than their connection to the royal family. See, as content creators or whatever, they had completely failed. They didn't have anything. They had no marketable skills. They have no talent. And so we were wondering which company was going to be next. People started speculating that maybe Netflix was going to drop them too. And as things were falling apart for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex career wise, people also started to wonder about the state of their marriage. We started hearing more and more rumors that the two of them were splitting up. Well, of course, that would be the logical next step for the two of them after all. Now, truth be told, I'm still not convinced that they have been together this entire time. It might have even been back in June that we started to hear rumors that Harry wasn't even living with Meghan anymore, that he had this separate hotel room that he liked to stay in when the two of them were having problems. In June, we also got to witness Harry testifying in the phone hacking case and making a complete ass of himself, if I do say so myself. His story didn't even make any sense. He couldn't keep his facts straight. He didn't seem to even understand that he was expected to produce evidence. Instead, he just blasted the destructive role the media played in childhood as he was testifying in the phone hacking case. Now, the judge was pretty lenient with Harry and didn't call him out on a lot of his BS, but others were not so kind, myself included. I mean, come on, Harry, you thought that you could just show up and everybody was going to believe everything you had to say because you are a prince? Haven't you figured out by now that you're just not that special? One more story that I want to touch on that I had completely forgotten about that happened in June was we heard this very bizarre story that Meghan and Harry were considering taking the Spencer surname, that they didn't want to be Mountbatten Windsors anymore, and Harry wanted to reconnect with his mother's family in some way, so they were thinking of changing their last name to Spencer. Now, at this point, obviously that didn't happen, but I'm still confused about where this information even came from. I can only assume Meghan herself and part of her little scheme to reinvent herself as Diana 2.0. So for Meghan and Harry, June was about as bleak as May was, and also April before that, and March before that, and February and January. It was becoming increasingly clear that 2023 was just not going to be their year. And as July rolled around, they tried to get some positive press coverage for themselves, but again failed big time. In July, they figured they would pull out the last stop. They would use the invisible children to try to garner some type of positive press coverage. So a photo appears that is supposedly Prince Harry and Princess Lilibet enjoying a 4th of July parade together in Montecito. But of course, the problem, as always, is we don't even know if it's them. The whole photo was really weird looking. There was a woman who I guess we were supposed to assume was Megan, but clearly wasn't Megan in the photo. And then Invisibet, again, we don't even really know what she looks like, so we have no way of knowing if this little girl was really her. Another problem with what was supposed to be a cute father daughter moment between Harry and Elizabeth was the fact that they complained so much about security, but here they were watching a public parade, and we didn't see any security people in sight. Let's remember that Harry has filed a lawsuit against his own family's government because he claims he feels so unsafe in the UK. Well, if Harry is so convinced that there are these mysterious people who are out to get him, why does he think they're not going to find him out in public in Montecito? Again, their hypocrisy was shining through. Now, my favorite news from July came when we heard about the list of nominations for the Emmys, and guess who wasn't included? Oh my goodness, what a shock! Plates were flying in Montecito on that day, we can be sure. Meghan Markle was pissed. How dare they snub her? We got this amazing headline out of it. Meghan Markle to be very choosy about future partnerships after brutal Emmy snub. Oh, yes, of course, because it couldn't have been Harry and Meghan's fault that they were snubbed. I mean, they produce such amazing content. It had to be the fault of Netflix. And apparently by July, Netflix had also given them some type of ultimatum saying that they better get to work and produce something or that deal was going to fall through as well. At that time, we were still wondering what was going on with Heart of Invictus, this documentary that was supposedly coming out any time now. In early July, Rolling Stone ran a scathing article on the two of them with the headline Meghan Markle and Prince Harry are in their flop era. Spotify's dropped Markle's podcast, and Netflix gave them an ultimatum. Are royal outcasts Harry and Meghan out of things to say? Well, now we're what, 5 months since that article was published, and I think we can say absolutely yes. Meghan and Harry did run out of things to say. Funny you should notice. I mean, the two of them have nothing to sell except their royal connection, and since they're not really allowed to spend time with the royals because the royals want nothing to do with them, they have nothing to sell, period. Looking back, July was actually a pretty rough month for the Montecito malcontents. It wasn't only that article for Rolling Stone. There was also news that came out that reportedly, after the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee, Harry and Meghan had requested a ride on Air Force One with President Biden and his wife Jill. At that point, anybody wanting to make a joke at Harry and Meghan's expense already had plenty of material, and this was just the cherry on top. With that news, it left little doubt that Meghan and Harry were absolutely delusional, and had been for a long time. It's so funny to me looking back, though, that Harry and Meghan really were relying on this Netflix mockuseries titled Harry and Meghan to get them famous and to make them some money. There's a great headline that ran in the Mirror: Meghan and Harry's dirty laundry plan backfires and leaves them pinned in a corner. Of course, that was how it was going to play out. Why did they think anything different would happen? I mean, initially, sure, people tuned in because they wanted to see what Meghan and Harry had to say. But when it became obvious this was just a rehashing of complaints we had already heard a million times, they quickly tuned out. Another thing that happened in July was Oprah Winfrey. Remember Meghan and Harry's best friend, their fairy godmother? Well, she celebrated her birthday, but guess who was left off the invitation list? Oh no! It's such a mystery, too, because they're neighbors in Montecito. How could their invitation have possibly gotten lost in the mail? But there's no other explanation. It's not like she wouldn't have invited them or anything, right? A common theme this year for Meghan and Harry has been that A-listers want nothing to do with them. And this was significant too, because in the past, Oprah Winfrey had been a big supporter of theirs. Let's remember it was with Oprah that they began their career of bashing the royals. Alright, so even though things did not look up for the whiners in July, maybe August was going to be their month. Maybe they could finally turn things around for themselves. Or maybe not. Basically, the first news out of the gate in August was the news that Harry's title had been changed on the royal family website. We got the headline Prince Harry's title quietly changed on royal family website following major blunder. It wasn't really a surprise, but it still felt satisfying to see it finally happen. It's important to remember that part of the whole Megxit deal was that Harry and Meghan were not going to use their HRH styling anymore, so that meant they were not allowed to refer to themselves as His or Her Royal Highness. Apparently, though, when Harry showed up to London for his court case, he insisted that everybody in the courtroom refer to him as His Royal Highness Prince Harry. Well, I guess after the change on the website, maybe he got the message that he shouldn't be doing that. One thing that we have seen time and time again over the course of this year is just what a spoiled brat Harry is. He's so entitled. I mean, he really believes that he can do whatever he wants just because he is a prince of the realm. He believes he can boss everybody around. He believes he is so superior to everybody else. He's got that smug, disgusting attitude. And that's probably been part of the reason that he and Meghan have seen their popularity fall to such depressing lows. We also kept on hearing rumors that Prince Harry and Meghan were headed for divorce, or maybe they were already split up. We kept seeing these reports that Meghan was going to reinvent herself, and at the same time, the rumors were becoming increasingly frequent that the two of them were done. Now, since then, Meghan and Harry have tried to quell those rumors by pretending to like each other, but the act is hardly convincing. Now, in August, we also got to see something that we had not seen for a very long time. We got to see Harry looking happy. And the reason he was happy? Well, for starters, he got away from Meghan for a little while. In August, of course, was when Harry and his bestie, Nacha Figueres, headed to Tokyo and Singapore. And interestingly enough, Harry looked happier than he had in months. Another interesting thing about this trip was that the work Harry was doing while he was in Tokyo and Singapore looked a lot like the work that he did when he was a working royal. For a while, it had been clear that Harry was not happy in California. His life had no meaning, it had no purpose, and this really cemented that opinion. Harry even said that he would happily live in Tokyo, suggesting that he would rather live anywhere except LA with that narcissistic witch he had married, Meghan Markle. But see, unfortunately for Harry, most Japanese people really value their family. They have respect for their monarchy, so most likely he wouldn't fit in there either. In August, we were also seeing headlines like maybe Harry and Meghan were going to reinvent themselves in the fall. Well, September rolled around, and guess what? It was more of the same BS. With September came even more snubs. First, the royal family ignored Harry on his birthday, and then Harry had to come back to the UK all by himself ahead of the anniversary of the Queen's death for the Well Child Awards. Now, while he was in the UK, did he visit his father? Absolutely not. Reportedly, King Charles couldn't find the time in his schedule to meet with Harry, but reportedly, he also invited Harry to join the family for the commemoration of the late Queen's passing. But did Harry show up? No. So again, any hopes of reconciliation between Harry and the rest of the family were dashed. And of course, the biggest thing that happened in September was Invictus Games. There was a lot of speculation about whether or not Meghan was going to show up. Well, she ended up showing up late. She stormed on the stage and told some stupid story about that she had to get milkshakes for the invisible children and drop them off at school before she came, and that was why she was late. Meghan had also called the Paps to come and take photos of her going through the In-N-Out drive-through right before she headed to Invictus. We can only assume she wanted to remind us how relatable, how down to earth, how normal she is. While at Invictus, Meghan also let everybody know that she was going to be doing her own hair and makeup, and it was pretty obvious that she was serious about that. She looked like a $5 hooker, leading everybody to come to the conclusion that she probably shouldn't be doing her own hair and makeup. Now, clearly, after Invictus, Harry and Meghan were exhausted, so they had a little vacation. They got away to Portugal for a few days after that trip. Still no word on what the invisible children were doing back in Montecito, but as usual, Meghan and Harry were not going to bring them along. September was actually a really busy month for the Harkles, though, because later on in the month they showed up to that Kevin Costner event, where Megan very awkwardly tried to steal the microphone away, but they didn't let her, thank God. And then she tried to shove Harry in front to do something. I mean, the whole event was just cringy. And apparently, Kevin Costner also made a little dig at Megan in his speech because Megan had been asking some really inappropriate questions about how much his place cost. So it looked like, again, more and more A-listers in Hollywood were falling out of love with the Harkles. But they figured they could still save themselves because in October they had this big event planned in New York for World Mental Health Day. They were going to show up and they were going to tell all the parents how to protect their children from online bullying. They were going to make such a difference. They were finally going to get all that positive press coverage they had been aching for such a long time. But unfortunately, things didn't work out like that. So Megan showed up to this mental health event in New York looking like an escapee from an insane asylum, wearing this really strange, off the shoulder white straitjacket. And then, of course, there was more nonsensical word salad speech from her. My favorite part, of course, was when she referred to Harry as this one. Apparently, she is so disgusted with him she can't even use his name anymore. And well, they were all tuckered out after that week or couple of days of work in New York, so Meghan and Harry headed for another little getaway. This time they flew via private jet, as always, to a small Caribbean island. Pretty quickly it became apparent that this whole trip was just basically an ad for Soho. But anyway, they were photographed by supposedly a passerby while they were just walking down the street. No security in sight. We are still not even convinced it's them in the photo, but whatever. Family Guy also got a turn at lampooning Meghan and Harry, making them look like the entitled rich a-holes they really are. After World Mental Health Day and the Canoan trip, they were pretty quiet until, of course, Halloween rolled around. So for Halloween, we got treated to a shot of Meghan and Harry and the kids out trick or treating. Or, wait a minute, who are those people in the photo? So it's a bizarre photo of four people trick or treating, a family of two adults and two children. There's actually no indication whatsoever that it's really Meghan and Harry in the photo, and interestingly enough, most media outlets didn't even publish the photo. I remember thinking at the time, how weird is this? All these media outlets are running this story about this photo without even publishing it. Even they know this photo is absolute BS. And that brings us to November, which is the last month that I'm really going to go into detail about because, well, it's December and this is all pretty recent news. As you all know, November didn't go any better for the Harkles. Still struggling, still hated, still trying to make a quick buck by selling royal family secrets. In November, we saw Meghan and Harry's names in the headlines once again. Number one, because they were not invited to King Charles's birthday party. And number two, Meghan walked down a red carpet and God knows how long. Of course, she was shoved along by an aide because she was taking up too much time, but that was her big event of November. She was wearing a beige dress that was ill fitting as always, and that was basically that. Apparently, she wasn't even invited to the event, but that never stopped her in the past, so why should it this time? And I'm sure there are so many examples of the Harkles failing at basically everything that I have forgotten to include. So now it is your turn. I need you to help me a little bit. Please leave me a comment and share with me your favorite Sussex fail moment of the year. And hopefully, over the next few days, I'll have enough time to make another video exploring your favorite Sussex fails of 2023. As always, don't forget to like and share this video with anybody who you think would enjoy it. And don't be afraid to click the subscribe button to get more updates in the future. Thank you so much for tuning in, have a lovely weekend, and we'll be back to see you all tomorrow.